only wishes he could be a demigod. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihori 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 Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihori Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihori Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Nanaranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihori Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihori Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pavakacharya Satara Sada Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinda Ki Jai. Jai Radha Krishna Gopa Govana Shai Makunda Radha Kunda Giri Gaurana Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Nama Om Vishwadaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 22, Text number 29, and we're continuing with the chapter of Krishna stealing the garments of the unmarried gopis. Atak gopai parivrito Bhagavan Devaki Sutaha Vrindavanad Gato Duram Charayanga Sahagrajaha Atago Pai Parivrito Bhagavan Devaki Sutaha Vrindavanad Gato Duram Charayanga Sahagrajaha Atago Pai Parivrito Bhagavan Devaki Sutaha Vrindavanad Gato Duram Charayanga Sahagrajaha Bhagavan Devaki Sutaha Charayanga Sahagrajaha Atagopai Parivrito Bhagavan Devaki Sutaha Vrindavanad Gatoduram Charayanga Sahagrajaha Bhagavan Devaki Sutaha Davanad Gatoduram Charayanga Sahagrajaha Atagopai Parivrito Bhagavan Devaki Sutaha Vrindavanad Gatoduram Charayanga Sahagrajaha Ata. Sometime later, Gopai, by the cowherd boys, Parivritaha, surrounded. Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord. Devaki Sutaha, the son of Devaki. Vrindavanat, from Vrindavan. Gataha, he went. Duram, a distance. Charayan, grazing. Gaha, the cows. Saha agrajaha, together with his brother Balaram. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada's disciples. Sometime later, Lord Krishna, the son of Devaki, surrounded by his cowherd friends and accompanied by his elder brother Balaram, went a good distance away from Vrindavan, herding the cows. Please repeat. Sometime later, Lord Krishna, the son of Devaki, surrounded by his cowherd friends and accompanied by his elder brother Balaram, went a good distance away from Vrindavan, herding the cows. Purport: having described how Lord Krishna stole the garments of the young gopis, Shukadev Goswami now begins introducing the description of Lord Krishna's blessings upon the wives of some ritualistic brahmanas. And reading from Jiva Goswami, having described the mercy given to the young girls, now Shukadev begins to speak of mercy given to the wives of the brahmanas performing sacrifice, since, no, excuse me, wrong one. No, that's the wrong one. It's 29. I want to do. No, it's right. It is the right one. I had these. Okay. I'll start again. Having described the mercy given to the young girls, now Shukadev begins to speak of mercy given to the wives of the brahmanas performing sacrifice, since there is similarity in the subject matter. The word atta indicates the beginning of another pastime. It was summer, whereas the Katyayani vow was in the winter, since the hot summer sun is later described. He was with Balaram, whereas on the day of stealing the gopis' garments, Balaram was not present. He was surrounded by his friends. This is mentioned here because the boys play an important role in the following pastime. He is called the son of Devaki for the previous reason. He went far from Vraj. First he went to Kamyavan with many hills. There he decorated himself with minerals. This will be described later. Then he went to the south of Vraj and came to the Yamuna in order to get drinking water for the cows who were thirsty because of the heat, in order to fetch lunch from Vraj, and in order to give mercy to the Brahmanas' wives by asking them for food. Om Agyana Timrandasya Gyanan Shalakaya Chakshu Ummitan Gena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Tatati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pasai Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamanitanamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvasesha Shunyavadi Praschadesh Charni Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasani Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This part of the chapter stealing the gopis, unmarried gopis' clothes. This part of the chapter could easily be part of the next chapter, which is the story of how Krishna gives his mercy to the wives of the brahmanas. Because now we've switched gears completely, and we're no longer dealing with that past pastime. In fact, Jiva Goswami makes it clear that ata indicates that it's a later time. In fact, it's at a much later time. The vow that the gopis were keeping is ending officially tomorrow by our calendar. So the vow to the goddess Katyayani is in the winter time. It's cold. And this next pastime is indicated to be in the summer. In fact, we'll be reading about the hot summer sun that is baking the whole scene in Vrindavan. And so it's to be noted here that the pastime, this pastime that we're going to now enter, reading for the next quite sometimes a long chapter, it's been included here in the Bhagavatam by Shukadev because of its similarities to the pastime we've just heard of where Krishna is giving mercy to the young gopi girls. He's now going to give mercy to the wives of the brahmanas. They're both Madhurya pastimes, very sweet pastimes, and they are considered within the conjugal mellow. There is a difference, of course, because the brahmanas' wives have a different relationship, being Brahmins and having a different age relationship to Krishna, and Krishna being a cowherd boy coming from of course, that's the whole part of the pastime, Vaishya family, and therefore not qualified according to the husbands of the wives of the Brahmins to receive any of the sacrifice. But both of them are dealing with this pastime, sweet pastime of relationship here between Krishna and these exalted devotees who are female, and therefore exhibit this very, very close relationship. So these are being grouped by the mood. The Bhagavatam, in general, does not go chronologically, but rather it goes according to the instructions and the mood of the pastimes. So therefore, it's not. It may have historical significance in the sense that these pastimes occur, but whether or not they occur in an order like a history book, that's not going to happen. It happens according to the instructional need and the mood of Shukadev Goswami telling the story to Parikshit here on the bank of the Ganges, where he is fasting before his demise, so-called demise, by the bite of the snake bird. It's also mentioned here that Balaram is with Krishna in this pastime, but he certainly wasn't in the last pastime, because Balaram's the older brother. He has a little bit of a Vatsalya mood. I mean, he's always taking care of Krishna, and he certainly would have chastised, you can't do this, you rascal, you can't do this, this is not right. And Krishna would be totally embarrassed to be around his brother, older brother, in such a situation. So that is the fact that Balaram's here is indicated that now it's pastimes with the boys, and the girls are not going to be included right now. This is he was surrounded by his friends. This is mentioned here because the boys play an important role in the following pastime. In fact, it's very important. They're like the message givers. They're sent ahead to talk to the brahmanas and to the wives of the brahmanas. And he went far from Braj, and he wandered here and there in many different places. In fact, we see how Braj is, how the Vrindavan area, when we go from the Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan to Govardhan, it's a 45-minute bus ride. That's a long way to walk with the kids. But there was a certain way that things worked in the pastimes of Krishna where the distances could easily be traversed. But it is a long way. There are a lot of different areas. So he's going far away, and he's going there because these different pastimes are occurring, and he wants to engage in certain activities as described here. He's going to paint himself with minerals, and he's going to get water for the cows, and it's all meant to sneak over to see, to give the mercy to the wives of the Brahmanas. And Jiva Goswami mentions that he's called Devaki Sutaha because Parikshit Maharaj likes that name because it's part of his family. But Sanatana Goswami, who has got a very similar, his tika, in fact, is almost word for word the same as Jiva Goswami's, except in a couple places. But in one of the places here, he does mention that he was also called Devaki Suta, not just because of Balaram, not just because of Parikshit Maharaj liking that because it indicates his family, but because the wives of the Brahmanas were sophisticated and they were near, and they lived near Mathura, and they kind of understood really who quote, really who was his father and mother, that he was the son of Devaki, whereas in Braj, no one's going to forget it. They're not going to think that way because everyone knows that Krishna is the son of Mother Yashoda and Nanda Baba, and there's no question of anything else. So this is the mood of these pastimes. These are pastimes that the great liberated souls, eternal associates of the Lord, and some who are sadhanasiddhas who are entering into that relationship, eternal relationship, are enjoying, not enjoying for themselves, but enjoying as partners in pastime with Krishna. And this is all the play of Yogamaya. And Yogamaya is setting everything up. Purnamasi Devi is making arrangements for these wonderful plays of love. But for us, there's a different story, because Yogamaya for us has a different role, as we understand from some verses in the Bhagavad Gita. Daiviyesha gunamayi mama maya duraya. The first two lines of this are important. That this divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of nature, is difficult to overcome. Mama maya duraya. So we're in an environment here where yoga, that maya, that of course we're in what's called Mahamaya, but Yoga Maya is just declared actually in another verse, verse number 25 of the same chapter, how it's Yoga Maya that's protecting Krishna. Naham Prakasha Sarvasya Yoga Maya Samavrita. So this same Yoga Maya that facilitates Krishna's pastimes also facilitates, it's like a door. It keeps the foolish and unintelligent. Mudo yam nabijanati. Now who's that? That's everyone. Loko mam ajam avyayam. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. So we see here that that this Maya is Duratya. It's hard to overcome. Yoga Maya Samavrita. He's covered by this Yoga Maya, and therefore we are unable to enter into these pastimes of the Lord because of our disqualification. And now the question is, who's disqualified? In this material world, who are the disqualified souls? And the answer is everyone. Abrahma Bhuvana Loka, Punar Arvatinarjuna, Mam Upecha Tukauntaya, Punar Janma Navijate. Now, that means from the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery where repeated birth and death take place. Brahma, the demigods, the ants, the germs, the humans, we're all covered over with material bodies and material consciousness to one degree or another that prevent us from understanding our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, we wander in this material world trying to find how to become happy. And we don't know how to become happy because we've got no clue. We've turned ourselves away from Krishna by hirmukha, turned our glance away. And therefore, all we see is the shadow, and we don't see the light. And, Krishna, Prabhupada uses that where nescience is darkness, Godhead is light. Where there is light, there is no darkness. So if we turn to Krishna, there's all light, but we want to turn away. That's our conditional state. So this is the situation. And we were talking the other day. Ratnaradhika mentioned the hole in the heart. No, actually, it was Irmala mentioned the hole in the heart of it originally, and then, somebody mentioned it, and it was mentioned a couple times. But the hole in the heart, being that we're looking for Krishna. That was the Ratnaradhika, and then of course Irmala mentioned that it was Thomas Merton who's a Christian monk, like the devotees at first mentioned it. It's also interesting to note that the Alcoholics Anonymous, they have a book called the Blue Book, and one of the points they make is that because of the vacancy in our heart, we fill it up with something, and in their case, they say people fill it up with alcohol. In other words, they're looking for meaning, they're looking for love, they're looking for a purpose, and there's nothing there. I mean, they look and there's nothing. And so this is the condition of the souls within the material world, that we're looking for meaning, and depending on our conditioning, tamagun, rajagun, or sattvagun, we may try to fulfill our needs in certain ways. Now, if we look at this tripartite kind of understanding of like goodness, passion, and ignorance can be seen at different levels. The demigods are generally understood to be in the mode of goodness, and therefore their need for meaning is already there. They're serving Krishna. They have a role to play. They've got great powers. They enjoy like anything. Therefore, they're not asking too many questions. In fact, they're just enjoying the good work that they put in, and they may have followed, they may be a soul followed karma kanda for many billions of births, and therefore now they've got the position of Brahma, or they've got the position of some other demigod, Chandra. Indra's a post. It's not his real name. It means he's the king. So the demigods, they don't ask many questions. They're enjoying in the sattva gun. And then if you go to the animal kingdom or the plant kingdom, they're not asking any questions either, because it's tamagun. It's just eating and sleeping and mating and defending. This could be also understood to be the position of the lower planets in the demoniac realms. There's no questions being asked there because they can't ask the questions there because they don't have the capacity. We see sometimes that dogs seem to have some emotion. They do. And so do some of the higher mammals have some emotion. But those emotions are limited compared to what a human emotion is. And, the dog likes you as long as you feed him. If you don't feed him, he probably won't like you too much. It's really, and you don't see dogs and cats, waiting in line saying, "Excuse me, you can go next." Everybody's just, they're in it for themselves. And so it's just, focused. And they don't have a present, and they don't have a past, they don't have a future, they just don't think. And what to speak of things like roaches and other things, there's no thinking. So in the middle, you have the human beings. And the human beings, we can think. and we become disturbed. We think about why we should be here. We want to understand what the purpose of life is. And then we start making things up because we're conditioned. Those in the mode of goodness, they're looking for things like, oh, I want to write poetry. We want to become philosophically aware. They may want to enter into like more fine pastimes of music and art. And there's a certain amount of elevation here. And persons become, they may become a vegetarian. They may become charitable in so many ways. It's good. And then, of course, in the mode of passion, we fill our time up completely with us doing stuff our whole life. Just do. Fill up that hole. You make it so full of just stuff that you can't possibly do anything else, and it may work for a while. And in fact, it becomes a burning desire. I'll give you an example. You think about the next president of the United States is a person, who has been trying his whole life to be president. He began in 1988. In fact, he began in 1972 when he became the point is, the whole life has been just driven. And finally, you get it. You've been looking your whole life, this is the mode of passion. But what does it give us? Prabhupada said, we try to become the best of this and best of that, and it becomes a total frustration. And of course, then we have people that, tamagun, eat, drink, and be merry, because tomorrow I'll die. Simply cover everything over. So this isn't going to work. This isn't the purpose of life. And Krishna therefore tells Arjuna, and the whole Bhagavad Gita is merely meant to tell Arjuna something like this, but more pointedly, if we look at the Bhagavad Gita in the end of the 6th chapter, because in the 6th chapter, Krishna instructs Arjuna about Sankhya or Dhyan yoga. And this yoga is described in detail, and Arjuna really doesn't think it's going to work, because he says that my mind's too disturbed. It's like trying to control the wind. Krishna does say there is a way to do it. You have to have the proper method. He says the proper with the detachment and practice, you can actually do this. And so he tells him that there is a proper way to approach this. But in the very end of the chapter, of course, we know the very famous verse at the end, but the verse right before it, Krishna makes a really good point to Arjuna. Tapas vibhyo diko yogi, jnanibhyo pi mato dika, karmibhyas chadiko yogi, tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. A lot of yogi mentioned here. A yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than the fruit of worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, become a yogi. So, the Prabhupada uses the word ascetic, empiricist, and fruit of worker, and in the verse itself, we've got tapas vibhya, that's ascetic, and then gnabhya, that's the wise, and then karmibhya, that's the fruit of workers. So those are the three groups he's giving. He calls the wise, he's calling empiricists. It's interesting why he calls them empiricists. Because in this world, the empiricists might be called the scientists. They're like the modern priests of the material world in Kali Yuga. So Prabhupada, in his purport here, he talks about how Bhakti Yoga, or Krishna consciousness, is the ultimate perfection of all yogas, as will be explained in the next verse. So that's the ultimate. But then he says the Lord has confirmed herein the superiority of yoga. But he has not mentioned that it is better than Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is full spiritual knowledge, and therefore nothing can excel it. So these other kinds of yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, mystic yoga, these different things, these yoga processes, that's at least they're yoga. They're yoga. It means they're trying to find transcendence. They realize that this world, just to play around here, is not going to be very helpful. So Prabhupada then, in his purport, speaks about outside of yoga. It says, asceticism without self-knowledge is imperfect. So one could become an ascetic, become very, dedicated to just trying to raise one's life airs and a certain type of impersonalist understanding of truth. And so if there's no self-knowledge, and what is self-knowledge? Self-knowledge, we know, according to the understanding of our acharyas, is to understand that we are eternal servitors of God, not that we're, some sort of impersonal, spark of light merging with some other, larger light. So this asceticism without self-knowledge is imperfect. It's better than other things, but it's imperfect. Empiric knowledge without surrender to the Supreme Lord is also imperfect. Maharaj has many times mentioned, we're not against science, we're against scientism. Science can do some things. We can become scientists. I mean, Isaac Newton was a great scientist. He also was Christian. And he also was if you'd asked him what he does, he would have said, I'm an astrologer. He did a lot of astrology. So there are a lot of things that in modern world we kind of dismiss because, they become degraded. But the point being is that someone like Isaac Newton, he was a man of faith, but he also used science to understand the world and understand how it works. And some of the things he observed and understood we still use today. So we're not against science, we're against scientism, which says that we can measure it. So like if you want to try to measure how far the moon is away, if you try to use a yardstick, you'll never make it. So if you try to understand God and transcendence with any measurement of this material world, you can't do it. It won't work. So Prabhupada therefore says that this empiric knowledge with empiricism is imperfect. So we can't solve the problem of the hole in our heart, that emptiness, through some asceticism, some Mayavad yoga, some empiricism, scientific understanding, or gyan. And then he says about fruit of work. And fruit of work without Krishna consciousness is a waste of time. Shrama eva hi kevalam. I mean, the best you're going to get is go to the heavenly planets. And it seems like it's going to be a long time. But for them, it's not so long. Some of us have now gotten a little older. And it's sure, I don't know how I got here. It didn't seem like it's such a long time. Back in 1970, I remember I was young, and I was saying, God, 2000 is a long way away. I'm going to be nearly 50 years old. Now it's 20 years behind us. So for the demigods, too, that life goes away quickly. So it's a waste of time. So the question is this, what to do? And then Krishna says, Yogi namapi sarvesham madgatenan turatmana shradavan bhajate yomam sa me yuktatamo mataha. What kind of yogi? And of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga, and is highest of all. That is my opinion. It's a very long purport. And Prabhupada really gets into a lot of different, very technical things. But one interesting paragraph here that he has describes a little bit of who Krishna is. If you become this highest of all yogis, the one who abides in Krishna, it is by great fortune that one comes to Krishna consciousness on the path of bhakti yoga to become well situated according to the Vedic direction. The ideal yogi concentrates his attention on Krishna, who is called Shaima Sundar, who is as beautifully colored as a cloud, whose lotus-like face is as effulgent as the sun, whose dress is brilliant with jewels, and whose body is flower garlanded. Illuminating all sides is his gorgeous luster, which is called the Brahmajyoti. And then he says he incarnates in different forms such as Ram, Nrsimha, Varaha, and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and descends like a human being. He goes on describing more and more. So here is a Bhagavad Gita, an introductory book we distribute to people, and right in a purport is a description of Krishna. Beautiful description of Krishna. It's brief, but it's beautiful. So this is the goal for the highest yogi. So what is the principle here? Well, we've heard many times before this saying of whiffum. What's in it for me? This is what everybody's into. Whether the dog's into it, woof, 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 I want my food, what's in it for me? The human being's into it, what's this contract going to help me with? What's in it for me? The jnani's into it, if I meditate and I become perfect, what's in it for me? Liberation. In certain religions, they pray to God, save me. What's in it for me? Eternal life. Whiffum. But actually, you have to change it to whiffik. What's in it for Krishna? Because that's the change of paradigm that means the difference for our lives. Because as long as it's whiffum, it's always me, 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 at one level or another. But when it becomes whiffik, it becomes, well, I could make a joke, it becomes terrific. But the point is, we have to think what's in it for Krishna. And that's also described in another verse of the Bhagavad Gita, because in the four seed verses, one of the verses, Prabhupada, of course, says, the thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. Everything centers around Krishna. Now, one may say, well, that's for the high devotees, and I'm not very high at all. But Prabhupada writes here an interesting point. In the preliminary stage of devotional service, they relish the transcendental pleasure from the service itself. And in the mature stage, they actually are situated in the love of God. Then he describes how Lord Chaitanya said this is a cultivation like planting a little seed, and it grows and grows and grows, and eventually the seed takes shelter at the feet of the Lord in the spiritual world in Braj. So we know when we plant a little garden, at first everything's little, but we're still getting pleasure from that little garden. So we take pleasure from our service, it says in the beginning. We dress the deities as well as we can, and we get pleasure. We may not be on a platform of the Brahman who's speaking to the deity, but we're dressing the deities very nicely. We go out and we distribute books, and we get pleasure by knowing, we're giving this to someone else. We have different services. We may give class, we may cook, we do different things. And in the service itself, knowing that we're doing the service for Guru and Krishna, we've given ourselves at least in this service, then we become enlivened in Krishna consciousness. So this is the goal, to become enlivened in Krishna consciousness at whatever level we're at, whatever our adhikar, our qualification is. And Prabhupada very much did that by giving everyone service and saying, simply serve and fix yourself at the feet of the Guru. Fix yourself in hearing and chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And then these pastimes will become alive. And we will be able to enter into what they call a rasic mood. But it comes in time, when it's supposed to come. But in the meantime, we get pleasure from the service and the association with the service to Krishna, association with the devotees. This is Prabhupada's mercy to us. And I'll stop there. Yes, Maharaj. Yes. Maharaj says, the empiricist, Jiva Goswami said that until one accepts the concept of a chincha, or inconceivable, one can't have an understanding of God, conception of God, because it's always going to be limited. It's a very important point. People say, when Prabhupada said that, in one class he was giving, he said that some people, they say they love God, but they don't want, but but they don't believe that he's really real. In other words, they'll talk God this, God that, and then you'll say, here's what God did. No, God can't do that. Why? Because our conception can't go that far. Yes. We have to always consider that association with devotees should be try to find advanced devotees, and when we're associating with